So good evening, everyone. The discussion is basically going to be on employment opportunities. And we saw a huge surge in terms of employment opportunities in India in the early 2000s. And what we want to probably see is climate tech going to be that catalyst in the coming decade. We'll take a step back, and this question is specifically for Parimita. How do you see climate change impacting marginal communities in terms of livelihood, employment, inequality of income, or other, SDG parameters? So where do you see climate change impacting these marginal communities?
No, thanks, Sumeet, for this question. I mean, all the experts are here, and there are so many information already available on how climate change is impacting various communities. Unfortunately, marginalized communities are being impacted the most, and they are the communities or populations who are least responsible for creating it. I mean, that's the unfortunate part. And if you see in the region, of course, I currently are working with UNEP in the Asia Pacific office, and if I take the examples of Asia Pacific region, the marginalized communities are mainly involved in livelihoods like agriculture, fisheries, forestry, and tourism sector. So if you see, at least 60 to 70% of the population are in these sectors, and we know that the kind of impact that climate change is making in those sectors. So they are heavily impacted. And lots of climate-induced migrations are happening, just they are losing their jobs or livelihoods. It's becoming a huge issue for the region, specifically for Asia-Pacific region. So as far as the employability is concerned, livelihoods is concerned, it's hugely impacted. I'll also bring the disproportionate impact on the women and girls it's bringing. I mean, there are, again, ample examples which says that how women are being impacted because of climate change, and how the rescue operations and all are where women are being impacted, even after post-disasters. So that's where it's mind-boggling. And we, as a community, have to take care of and bring the inclusivity component into the whole spectrum of climate change, and make sure that it's becoming inclusive in nature and following the leave no one behind principles as much as possible. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thanks, Parimita. And this is something that I know Pulkit resonates a lot with. Battery Smart is impacting a large portion of last mile mobility. And do you see this transition as creating, greater job opportunities for the low-income communities, and especially for women and urban poor, in terms of your business model? Some thoughts on that, Pulkit?
Sure. Maybe I'll start with kind of breaking it out into three fronts, and just taking a cue from what ma'am just shared. There is a sustainability angle which comes with, say, inclusiveness, the urban poor having enough opportunities to earn more. And there is obviously these are also the people who are most impacted by climate change. But then there are businesses like us who can or are working towards, it could be a byproduct for some industries, it could be the primary goal for others, but are working towards doing something that is having a positive climate impact. Now, both these are like feeding off each other and benefiting it out. But then the third portion is, which again resonates with a lot of investors, or what Shailesh was mentioning earlier, that impact does not happen at the cost of profits. Obviously, everyone is seeking that as well. So balancing these three out, right? The benefit of what we are trying to do, and just to give you some context for people who are unaware, we primarily work with bottom of the pyramid, two-wheeler, gig workers and three-wheelers, helping them get free from the recurring capex problem around owning, say, lead acid batteries. moving them to lithium ion, and also providing them a quick 2-minute swap so that there's no downtime and they can earn more. These are essentially people who earn less than $10 a day, and we have been able to double that income for them. That impacts their families, their livelihoods, and elevates their standard of living to a certain extent. And we serve more than 20,000 customers on a daily basis. 10% of them are interestingly women. But that being said, it is also in some way offsetting tailpipe emissions, given that these vehicles with our batteries are traveling around 150,000 kilometers every day. Right? So this is where that happens. But what I was coming at to make a point there is, maybe companies can use this to attract certain talent that resonates with this problem statement, right? So let's say when our employees see that they're able to increase income of a driver and they're making that impact and they're feeling it, right? They are more driven, and that's a subjective drive that some people will get and some will not, while you are still making a business for profit. But that impact angle gives you an added motivation for a lot of your workforce, right?
Thanks, Pulkit. And Sandeep, how is the climate crisis? Is it creating a new wave of jobs in the IT sector? Is it as big as what we're hearing? I know some consulting teams now have larger climate tech advisory teams than probably real estate advisory teams. And where are you seeing demand for climate specific job roles?
Sure. Sumeet, I'll just take, if you all permit, I'll just take a step back. I'll go back with Tech Mahindra. I was brought in as a Chief Sustainability Officer in 2007-2008. Now, that was a time when this word sustainability was confused. Nobody knew what exactly. In fact, I myself, kya role de diya mujhe? So, after I was given this role, I walked into my boss's cabin saying, what am I supposed to do? So he says, wo bahar log baithe unse baat kar le. And then I tried figuring out what the role was about. They said, wo CSR ka 2% fund hai na, to usko jaake you will utilize it. I went to the RCSR head saying, I'll work with you. He says, no, that 2% is mine. I said, okay, fine. Then somebody said, it's tree plantation. I said, much easier work. So net, I tried figuring out myself whether it was shared value, whether it was triple bottom line, it was people, profit, and environment. Everybody was, they used to kind of bring their own definitions as per their requirement. I said, enough of listening to all. In last 15 to 16 years, no consultants. I did not hire any consultant. I never hired a consultant. And today when I speak to you, proudly, I lead the world. You Google about Tech Mahindra ESG, we are rated number 1 in any benchmark in the world. Dow Jones Sustainability Index rated number 1. Recently, His Majesty King Charles gave our CEO Terracotta Seal on climate change. Only Indian company to be given that. Yes, but last 16 years have been what I have really learned, and that is where in September 22, this is last year, you just mentioned about the consulting offerings. We have launched our ESG offerings. That means very simply, I'm going back to my customers saying that whatever I have learned in last 16 years, I'll be helping you build that. And where the numbers come from, in last 1 quarter, the deals have started flowing in. The targets in next 2 hours will be in three numbers. So this is how you're seeing the change in the climate tech. There are platforms. What we're building, this I.Sustain platform, which I said, because the biggest challenge today is not the climate. It is basically saying is what is the problem that we have to solve? What is the quantum of the problem that we have to solve? That is a confusing state in itself. ESG offerings, where we are saying the consulting, 43 billion is being said by 2026. And that's a true number, because today I'm looking for ESG consultants today. When I get down into the details, not even a single individual has come to that kind of a rapport where he or she has been able to explain me what does exactly scope 3 means. This is the kind of confusion. And where the confusion about the scope 3 is, I'll give you only one example. It has 15 categories. One category is inbound and outbound logistics. If I have bought a laptop in Singapore, so I have to calculate the emissions of that laptop going from that factory to the airport, from airport flying all the way to India, and from India, if it is flying from airport to Gurgaon in my office, all the carbon emissions have to be calculated. Can you imagine how do I calculate that? This is the kind of a confusion that is there in the scope 3 emissions. Supply chain we are speaking about. But net, this is a place where the skill sets are required. 43 billion I said about ESG consulting, platforms going to almost about 2.5 billion. There is almost 15% CAGR improvements there. And same as in terms of green finance, we just spoke about it. 3,500 billion is the green finance. I'm launching my own green finance, green finance module, because there is no tracking of the modules. And this is where I think so most of you should look at. These platforms are the areas where the money is today. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandeep, for that. Parimita, as we face, this climate transition, what steps do you feel governments, policymakers, corporates should be taking?
Again, I will take the example of the whole region. I mean, I know India is in a different league altogether, but from our own experience in working in the region, one of the things what policymaker or decision makers and government need to do, and where the requirement is, how can we make sure that we'll have evidence-driven decision-making that's happening? We need to have platforms, we need to have access to informations and incorporating the digital technologies and making climate informatics available for the decision maker for right decision making. That part is missing at this moment. I mean, lots of informations are not available for policy making, which are so relevant. So that's something where the focus needs to be for science-driven, evidence-driven policy making and decision making. And the second important point is how to create enabling environment for investment to happen in climate technologies. That's again something is not happening in the region and globally as per the requirement. So we need to have different kind of investment plans. We need to have regulatory regime in place to make the investment happens, to give that confidence to the investors so that they can get into different countries and invest in climate technologies. And of course, from UNEP side, we have been working at the subnational level, at the national level, and trying to see how the investment would be made more conducive for the investors, and how the investment can also go actually for the whole community. I mean, it should not be into certain sections of the population. It should be widely used, and most of the population or community should be getting all the benefits. So the focus should be, I would say, on science-driven decision-making and right investment regime to be created.
You know, and a huge round of thanks to the UNEP team. It's since, I think, 2018, 2019, when Shailesh would have first met them, the first program we organized in 2020, when we were all virtual, sitting at our homes, but to deliver a curriculum, and UNEP has been supporting all these initiatives. We've supported startups from Thailand, Vietnam, run programs across the whole region. Really hats off. I think it has resonated with our team and how we've grown and taken this Go Massive initiative and Massive Earth Foundation forward. So thanks a lot for that, Parimita. Sandeep, what are the key steps or key measures that large corporates like Mahindra are taking towards climate mitigation and also towards climate resilience?
So, again, two parts here. One part is the measurement part of it, saying that what is my carbon emissions from, say, 2015, 2016 as a base year when you really started measuring, and what are the targets? So if those numbers are verified, accurate, then you know what is the problem you need to solve. Then solving those problems are looking at the solutions. We have ENCON, we have energy management solutions, looking at it, renewable playing a very major role today. I have promised that by 2025, 50% of energy for Tech Mahindra will come from renewables. All my PPAs are signed, I'm well geared up for that. When I've said my target for net zero is 2035, well structured, how I will get my supply chain involved, what will be my renewable by 2029. So the targets, the goals have been very clear at a Mahindra's level. Strategy, climate becomes a very important aspect, right from the board level, what are the risks and mitigations. Another very important aspect is how this gets driven from a board level. Now, if board is conscious, saying that these decisions have to be taken on, these are the mandates which are coming from climate-related risks. And today, whether it is IT or whether it is auto, there are climate-related risks. And if those risks are not mitigated, tomorrow it will be another disaster. So these are the things which we are looking at Mahindra as a group to drive forward.
Pulkit, are you facing any talent crunch? Is there, specific skill sets that can really help you explode? I know the word was different, but are you really facing a talent crunch too?
So, if I have to give a very short answer, no. And the reason being that we are not a manufacturing company, and there is definitely skill set gap in terms of technical expertise when it comes to manufacturing in the EV space. That being said, in general, there is definitely, because this is also a new sector and that transition is happening rapidly, right? So people who are actually good at it are people who have upskilled from some other sector and then become quasi-experts to certain extent. There is definitely a gap in terms of number of, and I'm just narrowing this down to our space, the EV space. But when it comes to climate, it's so broad and it touches so many industries that I believe it is more of a attitude gap in India than the skill gap itself. Number of people absolutely conscious about environment or sustainability is extremely low when you compare this to certain other developed geographies. And that is something where all of this helps, right? What you are doing or what UNEP is doing, what certain other companies and funds are trying to do as a mandate to their investment, then it trickles down to their employees and their customers and so on. I think that is the journey where we as a country are. We are more, if you, for example, look at our customer base, right? They did not choose a EV because of climate, right? They chose it for livelihood reasons, for accessibility reasons, and not really for climate reasons, right? Although they are the most impacted. So that is a bigger gap, is how I would put it. India has a lot of talent that can upskill itself when it comes to new technologies, whether software or hardware. But when it comes to cultural change, it takes a much longer cycle, right?
I think our e-rickshaw drivers have far more electrical capabilities than a lot of us sitting in this room, or probably a lot of electrical engineers, how they manage their vehicles. So yeah, completely get that. So now I'm just going to, there are a couple of questions that will be common to all of you, and I'll leave it, if any one of you wants to take the lead and answer the first one first. So, there are a lot of people who want to shift towards, I know here everybody is passionate about climate tech, but there are a lot of people who want to shift towards a career in climate. And any specific advice or guidance for them? Sandeep, do you want to start?
Yeah. So this is what is going to change in next 2 years. I'm sitting here, but everybody is speaking about digital. Now, in 2 years, you will see everybody will speak about ESG. We've started it now, but every digital will become ESG. Because every impact that you create, it reduces some or the other kind of carbon emissions. This is going to be a major transition in future. Now, when this will change, the skill sets required for ESG are the one where the focus will come into the picture. And if you go back, how many institutions do you see have provide, or do they provide ESG either as a, as a certification or either as a graduation? Not many. Most are giving post-graduation in ESG, and ESG is a different subject altogether. Not everybody who is really a person who has come in from another background can become an ESG expert as such. So if there is an education, it has to come in from the colleges, and colleges have just started in. You have few symbiosis of the world who started around 2017-18, so there is a definitely a lot of crunch in the market for the ESG as people in the market.
I'll kind of go back to my previous response. I think there are specific skill sets which obviously need to trickle down to a course level to certifications, whether it's through EdTech, which can happen faster than changing our college systems, which is, say, how to measure certain impact, how to create those policies that could lead to that impact, and so on. But maybe it needs to trickle down at a awareness level in our K-12, right? Because that is when the demand for those courses will also start picking up. If you talk to a normal kid today, they don't relate to that problem in the scale they should, in the volumes they should, while they are actually going to be more impacted than us, to be honest. So I think it needs to trickle down to that level, at least from an awareness perspective, so that you see more and more demand picking up for other courses. But yes, not just the ESG impact and policy side of courses at grad and post-grad level, but also the second level degrees required, which are very technical and can only work, say, just look at renewables, for example. They see a lot of talent crunch even today. If you look at EV manufacturing, we hardly have, I think someone pointed out, we probably have 110 or 120 PhDs in battery tech today in India, right? So those definitely are lacking, and they also contribute in fast-tracking our climate change initiatives across the country.
But just before, before Parimita answer, but again, this room is filled up with people who are passionate about climate tech. I don't know if 1% or 2% or probably 5% of us have degrees or backgrounds or things like that. So just, yeah, Parimita, your thoughts on that, what would, people who want to take up a career in climate, what would any specific advice or guidance?
No, thanks. This is a very interesting question. I mean, if I see my own career, I mean, in 2002, I did my MTech in Energy Science and Technology with renewable energy as the specialization. I mean, at that moment, very few people talks about renewable energy, energy efficiency, energy storage, and all those things. One of the suggestion probably what I can think of is, for me, I believe it's not completely a rocket science that people should be afraid of. If you are from a STEM background and if you are from an engineering background, maybe climate could be one of the applications. So apply the principles and apply the theory. Number of those can be applicable to the climate sector. And then lots of things can be done, lots of innovations can be done by applying science, by applying technology into the climate sector. So what we need is definitely the passion for doing and solving something. So if you are solution-oriented and trying to solve some of these things, don't be afraid of if your background at this moment is not completely on climate. I mean, that's something that can be, it could be application of certain techs and science and built upon that. I probably also bring one thing. I mean, I know I'm talking much more on the gender equality side, but one of the things what we know and what the information says that women are not being very much into the climate tech. The moment we say tech, so they are very, I mean, there are lots of information, IRINAS and so many other reports talks about that. It's much more general administration and managerial, but the moment we talk about technical, so that proportion is not there. Again, it's my suggestion, it's not that difficult. It would be really nice if we can have more women coming into the climate tech segments and consider that as one of the career. And growth more inclusively on that. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And Pulkit, probably you can take this for the first time. Any suggestions for educational institutes or edtech companies or policymakers on change in curriculum, or how do we create more jobs in climate tech?
I'll start with, we are 250 people today in our company. None of us specialize in any climate related degree, right? That does not mean we are creating at least some impact on climate, right? And that is why I keep saying this, that it is more of a culture and mindset issue than the hard skills. If you are trying to solve a problem which is going to have an impact on climate, it will. You can always then add on to those skills either yourself or through other people. The only person, and I'm just correcting myself, we had an intern who was from IIM Calcutta from ESG and worked with us for 6 months, educating us actually what ESG is, right? So I would say that you'll have to solve for demand before supply. If companies are hiring for people with certain skill sets, edtechs will be incentivized to offer those courses. People would be attracted to take those courses. It never works the other way around when there are courses and just expecting people to get conscious about it and start taking those courses. When we're paying good salaries, we need that talent as all the corporates. Courses will pop up overnight. That's how fast things work now.
Parimita, you would like to add something to this?
Probably I'll talk more from the, in future, I mean, if we see the energy transition, probably more from that perspective. I mean, the information what on the data says that for every loss of one job because of the coal phase down or phase out, or fossil fuel, let's say fossil fuel phase down, there will be around 10 to 12 job creations that would happen in the clean energy sector. But the question is, are we really ready to capture or to absorb those kind of jobs? So from that perspective, I would say if the curriculum would be more on the hands-on training, on practical training from the beginning, and create the linkages or the application of theories on more on hands-on and practical things. And if we focus more on that, then we can create a pool of or cadre of youth who can then take those kind of things forward. So my suggestion probably would be to focus more on application-oriented, hands-on curriculum to take care of the future of decarbonization or energy transition future and net zero societies to happen. Thank you.
Thanks. Sandeep, any thoughts on?
Yeah, see, this is what I've done at TechM. Okay, I have committed to the world that all my engineers would be eco-design and green IT certified. That means when they're programming, they would know what is the impact that they're having on the end product that they're developing or end service they're providing. Now, with this background, if most of the learnings which are happening in the colleges or in the schools, they could inculcate whether it is as a science or whether it is as something which could be just an awareness. But more or less, if this becomes a part of a regular education, is, that's a place where the difference will really come in.
I just have a closing, personal question that I had. The 2000 IT boom was led by something called कि Y2K आ रहा है और दुनिया बंद होने वाली है. Is that the same? Do you see climate tech or the conversations around climate change going in the same direction as of now, or where are we with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So look at the transition change, okay? I'll take a step back. I did mention to you how the 16 years changed. There was a time when I used to walk down into my CFO's office and say that, ye mere ko investment karni hai, will you think about it? He will not call me for X number of days. Today the time has changed when he's calling me up and saying that, when is it that your next PPA is going to get signed? Okay, how the transition has happened in last 16 years. Now, same is happening across every company. Now, sustainability was never, if you see Tech Mahindra, sustainability has been imbibed as fifth pillar of the strategy as such. Same is with the group, Mahindra as a group. Same you look at any company, whether it is Infosys of the world, Wipros of the world, or whether Tatas of the world, every company is today speaking about ESG. And why? Because they see the future there. And when I'm saying the future, this is again, I told you about consulting. But if you have a net zero goal, you need a solution to help you meet that net zero goal. And that solution could be whether it could be an IT solution, it could be a renewable energy solution, or it could be a packaging solution. Now, all those solutions are going to be part of the whole technology, and that's where the difference is going to come from.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks, Pulkit. Thanks, Parimita, for this discussion. I hope everybody enjoyed it.